Hey crew, it's Pitt and I'm back with a little something different. Today we are going to be shitting on communism, and if you don't like that, I don't care. We're going to address some comments that I have received because apparently me saying in the DAX video that capitalism is the way to bring people up out of poverty has stepped on a couple of toes. And while I am perfectly fine with stepping on toes, I do believe in monetizing the haters. And if I can dispense some knowledge while I am doing that, I am perfectly willing to go along with this entire presupposition. So, with that being said, I have taken a couple of screenshots and we're going to read through the first one right now. I'm going to pull it up for y'all so that you can look at it. I have cut the guy's name out of it, although it is freely available for you to go back and look. I do not at any point in time ever recommend anyone going back to anyone's pages to take action. You can go and block people if you feel so inclined, but I do not recommend going and making any comments of any type of a hateful nature to these people. I am going to address this here. I am going to link this as on the DAX video in a comment so that people can see exactly where I am coming from. Do not take it any other way than the way it is intended. Alright, so this guy says, by the way, the Black Book of Communism used the deaths of Nazis in their numbers and unborn babies. 95 million people didn't die because of communism, and the ones that did die were Nazis. Also, by the way, by using the logic of the Black Book of Communism, if we take a look at capitalism, the death tolls of it would be 2 billion. And before you say anything about people running away from communism, the only people that ran were the rich. There is no reason to run away from communism if you are the average citizen. You can have communism without authoritarianism, so any non-rich person that wanted out of Soviet Russia was running from authoritarianism and not communism. Also, you're probably going to bring up famines, and famines can be broke down to the fact that how they were poorly mismanaged resources and human errors, which also happens a lot in capitalist countries. So, using the famine argument doesn't really work when it happens in every system. In America, we waste about 40% of our food supply, which totals about $408 billion in food, which means the average American family throws out $1,600,000 worth of food a year. 1,600,000? Okay. In America, we have about 44 million people facing hunger a year, including 1 in every 5 children, which is about 13.5%. Why the feck do we have 13.5% of the population facing hunger, yet we waste 40% of our food? That doesn't add up at all. If anything, we have an abundance of food, yet we have starving people, which I think is a bigger issue that can easily be fixed. So why do we not do it? Like Bud, even before you even start any beef with a communist, at least come with some statistics. If you would like any sources of information that I have given, I will happily give them to you. Well, sir, let me tell you real quick. I do not require your sources of information. I am perfectly capable of finding sources of information on my own, and guess what? We are going to go through several of them today. I'm going to talk real quick about this fact. I have not read the Great Black Book of Communism. I read the Gulag Archipelago. Now, most people won't do that type of thing because it's a little bit of dry reading, and that's a dig at the next comment, in case you are wondering. It's a little bit of dry reading, but I have made a habit of dry reading, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, I have several playlists that will be linked up here, including the Communist Manifesto, which I am definitely going to include in this one because I shit all over Karl Marx, as he absolutely deserves for his childish and petty, vindictive thoughts and his perpetual sense of victimhood that he has infected many children with. And I use all of those words with the vitriol fully intended to be there. Because if you are an adult thinking like a child, then you need to be made fun of. And that is, in large part, what I am going to do here today. But I read the Gulag archipelago. Instead of the Black Book of Communism, I read from the words of a man who was an ordinary citizen and, in fact, not a Nazi, who suffered great depredations as a result of communism directly. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you should definitely check out the Gulag Archipelago for yourself. It is available on audio if you are not inclined to read that much yourself. It recounts in great detail exactly how the communist state came to be, the effectiveness of it, and several major problems that it faced along the way, not the least of which was, indeed, mismanagement. And that's where we're going to start this particular little discussion. The Holodomor. Now, you brought up a version. You brought it up. So that's why we're going to talk about it, right? You brought it up here in his, right? You're probably going to talk about the famines. Yes, we are abso-fucking-lutely going to talk about the famines. You want to know why? You want to know why it was mismanaged? Because there is nothing else that a communist can do. Anyone who believes that communism is the way to go is somebody probably stuck on the bottom. And you know what's got you stuck on the bottom? Your mind. Your mind and your mind alone. What happened during the communist revolution? People were mad. Absolutely rightly so, because the aristocrats were living a aristocratic life. And the entirety of society at this particular period in time was doing away with that particular philosophy of governance. Here in the United States, we enacted a brand new experiment in freedom that had not been enacted in the world before, and we are currently still living through that experimentation. Over there, however, they came up with a new idea. Mr. Karl Marx, in his being supported by a capitalist for the entirety of his life and not making anything productive on his own, started spewing the vitriol of class hatred. That guy has more than I do, therefore I need to hate that guy. Instead of trying to attain things on my own, I need to take his things. And the practical application of what happened in that was people who had for generations been farming the land. They had vast estates that they worked and hired laborers for. And they knew how to grow things. They knew how to produce from the earth the food that is needed for society to survive. But the government, in its wisdom, came to help. And they decided, you know what, Mr. Farmer, who has been here, and your family has been doing this for 200 years, you don't know what you're doing. You have no clue. What we're going to do instead is kill you. Because you have land, we're going to make you not exist anymore. We're going to take you off of the face of the earth. We have decided that you don't know what you are doing, but we, who have never planted a crop ever in our life, we know what to do. So they came up with an idea. They killed all the farmers, and then they moved the people to the farms. And they told them, plant all of these seeds at the exact same depth. And guess what? It was 2 feet in the ground. Well, there's almost no plants that can grow from 2 feet in the ground. So they starved people. But here's the kicker. Like, this is the best part of this whole situation, and you can do it. You can find this out if you do a little bit of dry reading for yourself. They didn't manage through their ineptitude to completely destroy the food system. They managed to grow a few crops, and then they took those crops entirely from the people who were growing them in Ukraine. They actually managed to grow some crops, and they went and they took them. And then they shot anybody who was trying to catch the pieces that fell onto the ground to feed themselves. They shot them, people. They killed them in cold blood because they were trying to scavenge grain, because all of the grain that they had grown and harvested was confiscated by the state and sent somewhere with the intentional purpose of killing their own citizenry. They thought that the Ukrainians were just a little bit uppity, and so they needed to be brought down a notch. It was the same in Romania. It was the same in various West Soviet bloc areas. This is not something that is up for debate. This is something that has happened, and you, sir, You try to apologize for that, and I say fuck you. With all the venom that I can possibly invest in those words, you are apologizing for the mismanagement that is the natural outgrowth of the system based upon petty jealousy. I am jealous of the things you have, so I want them. I think that I can do better with the things that you have, so I want them. I believe that the government can do better than you do. Well, no, sir. No, sir. That does not happen. You can go back, and Wikipedia is not an authoritative source. It is not a place that I suggest you end your research, but it is a damn fine place to start. And if you read through this particular wiki, which will be linked down below, you can find out for yourself exactly how bad it was when Ukraine, the largest grain-producing states in the USSR, was subject to unreasonably high grain quotas compared to the rest of the USSR, and they were caused Ukraine to be hit particularly hard by a famine. They grew the food there and they starved there. And if they didn't starve, if they were not okay with starving, if they tried to feed themselves, they were shot. And if they weren't shot, they were sent away. Here's another Wikipedia page that you can go back and read for yourself. We're going to talk about it, but we're not really going to read through it. There's a lot of dry reading in here. While I enjoy dry reading, not everybody does. So, what happens under communism? Mass killings. Now, the terminology, that's not what I'm looking for, right? Here is the different types. The following terminology has been used by individual authors to describe mass killings of unarmed civilians, that went the wrong way, by communist governments, individually or as a whole. There was so many of them that they had to come up with different categories of doing it, right? You had classicide. This is when they killed the farmers, right? Those were the not the proletariat. Those were the bourgeois. They had property, so they had to die. That was classism. That is today, right? Well, that's a billionaire. We gotta tax the rich. That's childishness. Classicide, premeditated mass killing. The entire killing of entire social classes. That is the natural outgrowth of communism. Crimes against humanity includes the direct mass killings of politically undesirable elements, as well as forced deportations and forced labor. Don't worry, we're coming to this part. Carlson acknowledged the term may be misleading. Democide, the intentional killing of unarmed or disarmed person by government agents acting in their authoritative capacity and pursuant to government policy or high command. Genocide, the mass murder of ethnic rather than political or social groups. That is also involved in communism. You don't believe that? Look at the Uyghurs. The Red Holocaust, coined by the Munich Institute for Zeitgeist, has been used by a professor of comparative economic systems for communist peacetime state killings. It could be defined to include all murders, judicially sanctioned terror executions, criminal manslaughter, lethal forced labor, and ethnic cleansing. Don't worry, we're coming back to that. And felonious negligent homicide, terror, starvation, which we just talked about in Ukraine. That's what that was. They did that in order to put them in their place. Mass killings. Killing members of a group without the intention to eliminate the whole group, or killing a large number of people without a precise definition of group membership, because you didn't have to have a reason to kill people. And politicide. Genocide scholar Barbara Hoff defines genocide and politicide, sometimes shortened to genopoliticide, to include the killing of political, economic, ethnic, and cultural groups, some of whom would not be otherwise covered by the Geneva Convention. Estimates. Let's talk about it. Any attempt to estimate the number of killings under a communist regime depends greatly on definitions, ranging from a low of 10 to 20 million to as high as 148 million. It depends upon definitions, right? Okay. Notable estimates and attempts include the following. So, big news, Berensky. This is what's her face on Morning Joe. This is her daddy. Wrote that the failed effort to build communism in the 20th century consumed the lives of 60 million people. In Rummel's book, Death by Government, included 110 million, which was later upgraded to 148 million due to additional information about Mao's culpability in the Great Chinese Famine, which we're going to get to in a minute. This is where or is this no, it's the next one. This historian here, Tomislav Dulik, criticized his estimate as an overestimation based on the inclusion of low-quality sources, because that's apologetics. In 1997, Stefan Quatol's introduction to the Black Book of Communism, an impactful yet controversial work about the history of communism in the 20th century, gives a rough approximation based on unofficial estimates. The subtotals listed up to 94.36 million, and this is your sole source of information. He was criticized by Nicholas Wirth and John Lewis Margolin as obsessed with reaching a 100 million overall total. Martin Malia wrote that the grand total of victims, variously estimated by contributors, between 85 and 100 million. Courtois' attempt to equate Nazism and communist regimes was controversial. It was not Nazis who were killed. In 2005, he stated, Benjamin Valentino stated that non-combatants were killed in communist regimes under the Soviet Union. China and Cambodia alone ranged from a low of 21 million to a high of 70 million. There's plenty of more information here that you can go back and once again read for yourself and understand exactly what you should be talking about. But no, this is information that you will not consider. Along with this one, the Great Chinese Famine. Here is another wonderful use of the communist predilection for killing people through starvation. They love to punish people by not allowing them to eat. And actually, I was wrong. They're the ones that said that you had to bury the seeds 2 feet down, right? I was wrong. I will admit that. It was the Chinese and not the Soviets that did that particular thing. The Russian thing was the intentional starvation. This was almost accidental. It was caused by incompetence, absolutely. But once again, communism is capable of nothing but that, because they kill anybody with free thought. They kill anybody who does not agree. That's a lie. You're lying, Pitt. Now we're going to talk about one more section and before we get to the next comment. You state in your comment that we still have pulled up right here that it was just Nazis who died. Well, this particular road begs to differ. And you don't know what I'm talking about? This is the Road of Bones, the Kolyma Highway in Siberia. And it is built upon the bones of an estimated 250,000 to 1 million imprisoned laborers. They didn't have the time or inclination to make graves for the people who were dying from their severe mistreatment due to disagreeing with communism in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. And normal, everyday, communist people were sent to these work camps. And they couldn't be bothered to bury graves for the people who died from the cold, from not getting to eat, from wounds that were not treated, from the various inefficiencies that are endemic to a communist culture. And they buried them under the road. They lined them up in a mass grave, and they paved over the top of them. And they drive the next group over the bones of the last group. This is the natural outflowing and the spitting in your face about your "it was only Nazis" comment. You're a fucking liar. And I would venture to say a complete and total piece of shit. Let's talk about the next comment. Right. Now this one Let me see if I can make that look a little better because I have to turn off all of the other stuff. Well, you're just going to have to deal with the background. Well, let's read it real quick. Oh, I'm going to read it from here. Y'all going to read it from there. This one's at the top, Pitt. Get up to the top. All right. Hi. At 4 minutes and 15 seconds, you mentioned that capitalism is the only thing that will end poverty. The opposite is true. Modern money theory is a pretty short explanation of how capitalism works. And if people would really care about it and take the time to take in that dry stuff that it is, we would have revolutions all over the place. My response, as you can see, is that that is silly and completely untrue. It relies entirely upon people who do not understand what the word currency means. Money is an exchange of time. An apple can be currency, and I have 3 whole videos, which will be linked, where I read aloud the Communist Manifesto, and I discuss this in there. There is not enough room in comments for this. Now, I don't argue in comments. Anybody that knows me at all knows that thing about me. There is not enough time in comments. There is not enough nuance in comments. I want my tone and inflection to be perfectly clear when I say things. And so I much prefer a video response. I will, most of the time, if you are wrong, simply say, no, you were wrong. Sometimes I will give a brief explanation as to why you were wrong, and then I will tell you to be blessed. Most of the time. That's generally how I handle that situation. I'm a little bit perturbed about this one because the first comment was left 5 times because this guy thought that I blocked his comment. Now, I end every one of my videos these days talking about how if you disagree, I'll let it stay up, and I do. If it is not disrespectful or out of the box, I do not take it down. All 5 of his responses, as far as I know, are still all up. I did not block those. But his first comment, it did get blocked. That was not me. That was YouTube. If you are going to write comments and they are going to be directly defamatory, inflammatory, or in any way insinuating violence or calling people out of their names, YouTube is going to block it. And I will not approve it once YouTube blocks it. If YouTube has decided that this does not need to be there, I'm going to let it ride because it's their platform that I am using. Capitalism. And so I have to accommodate myself to their platform. Modern monetary theory. We're going to read a little bit of this one. Modern monetary theory is a heterodox macroeconomic theory that describes currency as a public monopoly, and unemployment as evidence that a currency monopolist is overly restricting the supply of the financial assets needed to pay taxes and satisfy savings desire. According to MMT, governments do not need to worry about accumulating debt since they can pay interest by printing money. MMT argues that the primary risk, once the economy reaches full employment, is inflation, which acts as the only constraint on spending. MMT also argues that inflation can be controlled by increasing taxes on everyone to reduce the spending capacity of the private sector. None of that works. MMT is opposed to the mainstream understanding of macroeconomic theory and has been criticized heavily by many mainstream economists. MMT is also strongly opposed by members of the Austrian School of Economics, with Murray Rothbard stating that MMT practices are equivalent to counterfeiting and that government control of money supply will inevitably lead to hyperinflation. And he is correct. Let's talk about it. We are currently in a state of hyperinflation right fucking now. That is a direct result to the amount of money that has been printed in the last 4 years. More currency has been printed in the last 4 years than in the entire history of the United States. We have more currency flowing across the world right now than we have ever had before. And let me tell you how this works. Let's say, for instance, that you produce a lighter, right? I use a lighter because it's here, it's easy. This is the only lighter in existence. This lighter is worth $1 million. But if I take this lighter and I make 1 million of them, then they are no longer worth $1 million a piece. It is much more likely that they will be worth $1 a piece. If you create a dollar out of nothing, it has no intrinsic value. Now, currency is an exchange of time. It is not an exchange of currency. The currency is your time in a physical way that you can trade. Suppose you live on a farm and you raise cows. Your cow is your currency. If you live on a farm and you raise potatoes, your potato is your currency. It is the thing which you will trade to someone else and say, hey, Mr. Cow Guy, I have some potatoes. I would like a cow. How would you like some potatoes? That is currency. That is how it works and has worked on a fundamental level since the beginning of time. There did not need to be a coin. There did not need to be a paper, anything. People use sticks. People use rocks. People have used all kinds of various ways to exchange their value for someone else's value. Inflation is when the value is not represented by the currency. So, we have created a whole lot of money out of nothing. We have printed our interest. The only way to get that under control is through two rates, right? When you have inflation, which is caused by creating currency from nothing, then the only way to get that under control is to raise the interest rates so that money is harder to get. That's one of the two ways to do this. The other way is to actually produce things that are of value so that it is compensated for by the currency that is already created. So you need new things that hold value, or you have to create interest so that money gets harder to spend. It is much harder to invest, and it's something that you cannot currently afford if the interest rates are high. That makes money less likely to move around, and therefore takes some of the bite out of the fact that you have so much currency moving around. But if you can create value for that, then the interest rates will come down. We're about to see a rate decrease here in this country in order for political reasons. We have not created the value, nor have we really restricted the way that money is spent. And so they are trying to build this off of credit right now, which is going to hurt us greatly. Everybody's about to be hit with some severely high interest rates because people are buying groceries off of their credit. This system, right, is fundamentally flawed. It does not understand what currency is. It is the exchange of my time for your time. But instead of having to carry around a cow or a sack of potatoes, I have a dollar bill. And I determined that my wages are worthy of my effort in time. I have decided that I want to work for minimum wage. Not a thing. Or I have decided that I want to work for more than minimum wage. That is your decision. You get to decide what you would like to work as. Here, you do not get to do that in communism. In communism, they tell you what your job is. Whether you're good at it or not, whether you will ever be good at it or not, you are assigned by the state. The fundamental misunderstanding of what currency even is a whole problem here. The thinking that you can pay interest by printing money is fucking dumb. Again, I mean that with all the vitriol that I can possibly imbue in those words. It is beyond belief that somebody would come into my comments. I have spent a lot of time going through a lot of really dry reading. I read this stuff aloud so that we can talk about the concepts behind them in the same way that I am doing it here. I will show you examples of where other people think the same thing I do. I do not pull this out of my ass. This is a basic understanding of how money works, and you do not possess it. Quit commenting on people's things. You do not have a slight comprehension about the topics of which you discuss. You have no clue whatsoever of the things that you are talking about, and you are spewing sewage. Completely and totally, 100%. MMT's main tenets are that a government that issues its own fiat money can pay for goods, services, and financial assets without a need to first collect money in the form of taxes or debt issuances in advance of such purchases. Cannot be forced to default on debt denominated in its own currency, is limited in its money creation and purchases only by inflation, which accelerates once the real resources, labor, capital, and natural resources of the economy are utilized at full employment. That is untrue. Recommends strengthening automatic stabilizers to control demand pull inflation rather than relying upon discretionary tax changes. Issues bonds as a monetary policy device rather than as a funding device, and the role of taxation is understood in slightly different ways in MMT, although it is often said to not fund the spending of a currency issuing government. It does provide the physical space for governments to spend without causing inflation, and also gives a value to the currency. Without this, no real spending is, of course, possible. We're not going to read through the history. You are more than welcome, but I'm not going to. We're not going to do the theoretical approach. We're going to go down here and we're going to look at the criticisms real quick, because there are several of them. I thought there we go. A 2019 survey of leading economists by the University of Chicago's Booth's Initiative on Global Markets showed a unanimous rejection of the assertions attributed to the survey to MMT. Countries that borrow in their own currency should not worry about government deficits because they can always create money to refinance their debt. And countries that borrow in their own currency can finance as much real government spending as they want by creating money. Directly responding to the survey, economist William K. Black said, MMT scholars do not make or support either claim. Multiple academics regard the attribution of these claims as a smear, although it is up there. Largely a restatement of Keynesian economics, but prone to simplistic analysis, which is absolutely true. You are thinking like a child, and understating the risk of its policy implications. He disagreed with proponents of MMT who have asserted that the Keynesian analysis does not fully capture accounting identities and financial restraints on a government that can issue its own money. You cannot print your way out of inflation. Inflation, as a matter of fact, is caused directly by printing money that you do not have, or overvaluing of things because currency is hard to obtain. We, in a free market economy, have the ability to change our direction. In a communist one, you do not. In a communist top-down led situation, somebody who has no clue about real-world things will absolutely wind up in charge, because there will be a class. It doesn't matter if you think I am wrong. It has been proven to be true. When communism overtook the USSR, we had a government that was formed by the people who performed the revolution. What do you know? And they wound up being inefficient. What do you know? Well, when Cambodia did the same thing, same problem. When China did the same thing, same problem. North Korea, same problem. Laos, same problem. All of the various places where communism has been, turns out, people die in great numbers. through inefficiency, because the natural outflowing is jealousy. It is, you have more than me, so I'm going to kill you and take what you have. But once you have it, you don't know what to do with it. You don't have the gumption to learn what to do with it. If instead of spewing this nonsense as though it were true, you would take the time to invest in yourself in the manner that I tell people to do every single day, you could rise above these fallacious thinkings. But instead, it is much easier to take exception with a throw-off phrase in the middle of a reaction video. Capitalism has, indeed, led to less poverty in the world than ever before. Prior to the current implementation of it, people were serfs and they didn't own shit, or they were slaves and they didn't own shit, somebody else did. That wasn't really capitalism, although it used capitalism problems. That was authoritarianism in the exact same way that communism is. Communism promises that they're going to get rid of the ruling class, but they don't. They create a new ruling class. They just refuse to call it that. They call it something else when they're shipping you off to the gulag to be buried beneath a road, where they allow you to freeze to death and starve you and use up every ounce of labor that they can beat out of you until you die, and then they completely disregard you. They take any dissatisfaction with the system and use that as an excuse to send you to the camp. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you definitely need to read the Gulag Archipelago. It is completely littered with it. It was a man who understood what was going on and who was trying to comply. He was trying to be a good communist, and he wasn't, because communism cannot have good people. And so he was automatically completely opposed to it, even though he was trying. There is no example of communism working. I say that with this caveat. The same one that I put in the Communist Manifesto. If you take the time to go back and watch it, you probably didn't watch this video, but if you do, go back and watch my 3 videos on the Communist Manifesto. I started it talking about the exception, right? I believe in communalism. I believe that we as communities need to take care of each other, but I believe that is on a voluntary basis. You talk about famine. You talk about capitalism causing famine. How much food do you throw away? How much food have you wasted? Have you ever thrown away half a burger? Have you thrown away a couple of fries that you didn't eat? That is calculated in that number that you like to throw around. The current implementation of capitalism doesn't mean that it is perfect. Doesn't even mean that it works in the manner that it was intended, right? But capitalism is a fundamental human proclivity. You are automatically inclined to want what someone else has. And there are only 2 ways to get that. You either take it by force or you exchange something for it. If you take it by force, you're a communist. If you exchange something for it, you're a capitalist. It really is that easy to define. If you exchange something that you have worked for something that someone else has worked for, you are participating in capitalism. I believe in ethical capitalism. I am striving with my whole chest to make money to give it away. You don't know what I'm talking about because you haven't been around here. You only watched one video and you extrapolated from that who I am. But you don't know, because the goal of this channel is to give away money. I want to make money to give it away in a very, very real way. I have intellectual property that I am developing with the sole intention of creating a school to give away money. I have this entire thing I'm doing over here, all the videos I have are all goal-oriented towards that. I have a game, I have 2 games actually, that I am creating in my own game studio in order to sell so that I can use those profits to invest in the school. I want to give away money. I want to build my community in a communal way. That is not communism. That is capitalism in its best. It is me saying that this money that I am making, now that it is enough to pay my bills and for me to live comfortably, not even gonna lie, I like comfort. I love the fucking air conditioner. I want to live in comfort. But once I am living in comfort, not excess, but comfort, I want to give away just as much as I possibly can. I want to invest in a school that is going to teach people the things that our government has failed to do. I want to invest in people on a very real level. I want to do like Donald Trump did and invest in somebody's business. They come to me with a business proposal and I'll be like, that looks good. Here's the terms. Go out and make your profit and then come back and pay me. And when they come back to pay me, I want to tell them you don't have to. I want to do that. I want to give away money. And I am 100% a capitalist. I do not even entertain the knowledge of the government doing that instead of me. I could probably go and get grants from the government. I don't want to do that. I want to create my own wealth to give away. I want to be the example of ethical capitalism because I believe it can be done. I don't believe it is being enacted in any significant way. And I want to be that example. I want to take the fruits of my labor and invest it in my people. But if the government gets involved, then I have to start throwing freedom seeds around. Because the government can't do it. I can. The government can't do it. You can. But when you throw away half of your fucking burger that you just didn't want to eat anymore, you're partaking in capitalism and you are the very thing you're talking about. If you're throwing away the leftovers that you cooked for yourself, you are the problem, not the government. Does the government have problems? Absolutely. I'm a very vocal critic of that in the exact same way that I'm a very vocal critic here. I shit on the practices that we use in the same way that I shit on Karl Marx and modern monetary theory. All of them are improperly implemented. I believe that our resolution comes from the individual, not the collective. And that is the defining difference between communism and capitalism. I believe that we can. You believe that you can take it. And that is the difference. And that's where I'm going to wrap this one up. I know that this one's unusual for me, right? I normally don't get this vitriolic. I normally do not get this animated. I am here to dispense knowledge. I do that daily. I'm here for a couple of hours a day trying to help you become a better you because I believe that you can. I am here spewing knowledge and throwing enlightenment around as if it was candy. I am here trying to help as many people as I possibly can. But anyone that is aligned with this is diametrically opposed to me on a fundamental level. And I'm not going to block you. I'm going to blast you. We're going to talk about why you're wrong. And you probably don't agree with this. You apologize for all of this. Well, almost all of it. You didn't know about that road, did you? Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment, not too much confusion, and possibly a little bit of levity to a very serious set of problems. There are people out here pushing actively to take away your rights, and 2 of them have been in my comments, and you got to see them today. There's more. They're not the only ones. They're just the most recent ones. The one guy was so insistent that I had to throw him in here. I cannot believe, like I'm going to block that ridiculousness. Like it is so easily broken apart that it's not worth my time. Going in the comments to say something that you are going to dismiss serves no purpose. This video, however, will serve a purpose. This will be attached to the Dax video. I will put it as the pinned comment on that particular video because apparently it's going to step on toes. And this video, this one right here, even though your name's not in it, you're going to be the famous one because every single time a communist pops up in my video, in my feed, this is the video that's going to get them. It's going to be because of you that we addressed all of these issues. And there are more. I fully acknowledge that there are more issues that I could pull out. We could talk about so many horrible things that you wouldn't sleep at night if you really knew the things that go on because of communism. You would be so scared that it was going to come here that you would shiver in your fucking bed every day. The people who are advocates for this have never seen the effects of this. They haven't lived with starvation. I've walked through communist countries. I was in the Navy. Everybody knows that. I was combat deployed. One of those combat deployments was to Bosnia-Herzegovina. And our port calls were in ex-communist Russia. We went to Poland. We went to Latvia. We went a lot of places. And everywhere that communism used to exist is still a fucking shithole. That's because they are still stuck in the mindset. Even though they are trying to embrace capitalism, they're still stuck in the mindset of communism. The buildings are still the same drab shitbags that they were. The people are still the same intolerant people that they were. Communism is a symptom of a much larger disease. And that disease is a mind disease. It is the inability to grasp facts. It is the inability to think for yourself, to reason and logic, and to look at historical information. And is the problem that we face in large across the entirety of this country and the entire globe is dumb people believing dumb things and refusing to be educated on it. And I do not stand for that shit. I'm not going to argue with the willfully ignorant, because arguing with the willfully ignorant is like pissing in the wind. You get it out there, but you just wind up pissing. I will do videos like this. We will talk about what the facts are. The facts are that people die every single time communism is tried. I will not stand for that. If it starts here, then I die or you do. One of the two. It is that simple. If you like what I'm doing here, let me know down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment if you agree or disagree. If it remains respectful, it gets to stay up. If you really like what I'm doing here, hit me with that super thanks, because I am not a communist. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.